welcome to Global Learning. I am Maribel and this is my second episode. We're going to continue exploring more relevant information about the 2030 Agenda. In the previous episode, we looked at what the agenda is, how it came about, and its structure. Today, we'll ask who found it, which of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals are actually processing, and why. We'll use data, countries examples, and a timeline to understand the real process beyond use the rhetoric. So, let's begin. Well, now we know that the 2030 Agenda started in 2015. That year is the baseline. From the 2015 to today, results are mixing and complex. According to the latest UN and SDG Transformation Center reports, by the 2025, only about 18% of measurable targets are on track. Around the 70% show moderate progress, about the 48% are insufficient, and nearly than 18% are regressing. Regions such as East and Eurasia have moved faster since the 2015. Countries like Nepal, Bangladesh, Cambodia have raised social indicators significantly through investment in education, healthcare, rural infrastructure, and digital access. In contrast, many nations in sub-Saharan Africa or small island states are struggling with weak institutions, high debt, and climate disaster that slow progress. At this halfway point to 2030, the message is clear. Commitment is high, but delivery remains uneven. Progress is no longer about making promises, it's about whether countries can turn those promises into measurable change. In addition to these regional partners, several specific countries' case illustrated how the timeline from the 2015 to 2025 has unfolded in practice. For example, Nepal has achieved one of the faster improvements in South Asia. Its SDG index score increased by the over 11 points since the 2015, only due to target investment in maternal health, rural connectivity, and gender equality programs. In Cambodia, access to sanitation and electricity expanded dramatically between the 2015 and 2023, improving both well-being and productivity. In Latin America, Peru shows a strong upward trend. Its SDG score rose by nearly 9 points between the 2015 and 2024, supported by long-term social programs, stable macroeconomic policies, and better statistical systems. Costa Rica also continues to perform well, especially on climate actions and clean energy, thanks to consider environmental policies and natural-based tourism model. Meanwhile, the Middle East, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, recorded one of the largest jumps among upper middle income countries, almost 10 points since 2015, driven by massive investments in digital infrastructure, renewable energy in projects, and international cooperation initiatives. In Europe, northern countries such as Finland, Sweden, and Denmark remain global leaders in SDG performance, consistently ranking in the top 5 of the SDG index. Their process is based on strong social welfare systems, high education, equality, and transformed governments. However, even their challenge remains around responsible consumption and climate emissions. On the other hand, many countries in sub-Saharan Africa continue to face serious obstacles. The UN in 2025 report shows that more than three-quarters of the world extreme poor, about the 808 million people, are projected to live in this region or in conflict-affected states by the 2030. If current trends persist, fragile states such as South Sudan and the Central African Republic remain among the lowest SDG performance, with index score well below the 15 out of the 100. Another critical observation is that global progress is uneven not only between regions, but also between countries. Urban areas often shows strong advances in education, connectivity, and health, while rural or indigenous zones remains far behind. Data disaggregation shows that even where advances looks good, inequalities persist beneath the surface. This decade's journey from the 2015 to 2025, there has therefore been less a smooth road and the more patchwork of faster lands, slow lands, and even the reverse lands. Some nations are accelerating, others are stagnating or falling back due to crises like COVID-19, debt, stress, or war. The overall takeaway is that the SDG timeline is dynamic, is reflect political will, institutional strength, and resilience to global shocks. At the halfway point, progress is visible but fragile, and the next 5 years will decide where the 2030 agenda can move from promise to the real transformation. Let's continue with the goals that are advancing faster and why. The goal 7, affordable and clean energy. Many countries have improved access to electricity and encouraged to share the renewable energy. East and South Asian nations are clear leaders here. China, for example, has invested heavily in solar and wind capacity. It now processes over 1/3 of the world's solar energy. India, under the National Solar Missions, plans to reach 280 HW of solar energy by the 2030. In Africa, Morocco has built one of the largest concentrated solar plants in the world, north of Ursasate, while Kenya gets more than 18% of its electricity from renewables such as geothermal and wind. This success combines public investment, international funding, and private sector innovation. The goal 3, good health and well-being, some low and middle income countries have made major gains in reducing child mortality and expanding access to basic health services. Rwanda, for instance, became a model in Africa for community-based health insurance. Under President Paul Kagame's administrations, over the 19% of Rwanda now have healthcare coverage. Bangladesh reduced maternal mortality by the 70% in 2 decades thanks to training programs for rural migrants and cooperation with the WHO and UNFPA. Meanwhile, Vietnam and Thailand have stringent universal health programs financed through progressive taxation, showing that even developing economies can expand coverage sustainability. The goal 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure improvements in mobile broadband, internet access, and transport corridors have accelerated in several regions. For instance, Indonesia's digital economy roadmaps, the 2025, and Nigeria technology hubs such as Java Valley in Lagos are generating local innovation ecosystems, and in Europe continues to lend in research funding. Finland, Denmark, and Germany integrated innovation into green transformation strategies supported by the EU Green Deal and Horizon Europe programs. Saudi Arabia and the UAE are also pushing large infrastructure projects like NEOM and Master City to diversify away from oil. What do these success stories share? Strong institutions, infrastructure investments, and clear tires and data systems. Cooperation between governments, private sector, and donors. However, and this is key, even these success stories still have serious gaps. Accuracy remains a problem. In India, rural electrification is high, yet many households face unstable supply. In China, air pollution changes remain despite the renewable growth. And Finland ranks near the top of the SDG index in 2024, but consumption-based emissions per capita area is still high. And Costa Rica, often seen as model of sustainability, struggles with transforming emissions and waste management. And in all these cases, progress depends on consistent policies that survive political challenge. This shows that while the SDGs can guide nations, maintaining results require long-term governance, civic participation, and the courage to link economic growth to real environmental and social justice. Now, why some goals lag behind? Now comes the more difficult part. Many goals are far behind. No SDG is guaranteed to be met Globally, by 2030, Global 13 climate action in 14 live on water and 15 live on land are especially weak. Countries might have plans, but global emissions keep rising, biodiversity keeps declining, and ocean remains under threat. In 2024, the UN reports our greenhouse gas emissions are the 8% higher than in 2015, and 19% of marine species are affected by human-induced pressures. Deforestation in the Amazonas and Congo basins increased after the 2020, and the world lost more than 10 million hectares of forest each year. The goal 10 reduce inequalities is also worrying. In many countries, the poorest 40% saw little or no income growth despite overall economic expansion. Latin America remains the most unequal region. In Brazil and Mexico, the richest 10% control more than 60% of national wealth. Meanwhile, gender inequality remains severe. The World Economic Forum's 2024 report shows that at the current rate, it will take 132 years to close the global gender gap. Why do these lacks persist? Lack of adequate financial or long-term investment, weak governments, corruption, capacity constraints, data gaps. Many indicators still lack current or disaggregating data. Implementation challenge. Projects might not reach marginalized groups. Quality and maintenance can be poor. Trade-off. Grow in one area might have another. Industrial expansion versus environmental damage. According to the UN in 2025, SDG progress report, developing countries spend an average twice as much on debt payment as no education or health. This limits their ability to invest in long-term sustainability. Countries like Ghana and Zambia have faced debt crises that force them to produce social spending, while Pakistan and Sri Lanka depend on IMF programs to keep basic service running. Even middle-income nations such as Argentina or Turkey struggle with inflation and fiscal stability that limit investment in SDG. Environmental goals also suffer from contradictions in policies. For instance, Indonesia and Brazil continue to approve larger scale agriculture projects in protected areas to boost exports, while subsidies for fossil fuels in countries like Russia and the United States remain very high, over the 7 trillion USD globally in 2044, according to the IMF. Meanwhile, Pacific island states like Tuvalu and Kiribati faces essential climate threats despite the contributing less than 0.001% of global emissions. The UN 2025 reports emphasizing that many developing countries cannot access a low-cost, long-term capital because of credit ratings and high-risk perceptions in international markets. To close this gap, initiatives such as the Breakstone Initiative and the Paris Pact for People and the Planet seeks to reform the global financial architecture, but progress is slow. As Mia Motley, Prime Minister for Barbados, says that the UN General Assembly in 2024, we cannot finance our own survival on the roles to pushing the most vulnerable. The reasons behind slow progress are not only technical but deeply political. Unequal power structures, short-term economic interests, and lack actual accountability continue to delay real change. Unless financial reforms and global governance become fighter the 2030 agenda risk, ending a map of good intentions rather than the record of transformations. Interest behind the goals. Let's start with the money. Many green or sustainable investments are led by the big corporations, energy companies, tech giants, and banks that also happen to be major pollutions. A participations help fund renewable projects, but yes, but it also serves a strategy to offset emissions, improve their public image, and maintain influence over the new markets. For example, most green bonds used in the 2020 have gone to middle income countries such as Brazil, India, or Indonesia. No to the less developing economics that need it most. Oxfam's 2025 reports warns that nearly 70% of global investment in renewable energy are concentrated in just 10 countries. So the global energy transition is not as global as it sounds. The crisis of transparency. Another higher issues is how progress is reported. Countries represent their achievements through voluntary nation review, but these reports are not always verified by independent experts. Some governments highlight success stories while omitting environmental demands or social conflicts caused by the large-scale projects. Social civil groups in Latin America and Africa have denounced that certain hydroelectric or mining initiatives labeled as sustainable development has displaced communities or destroyed ecosystems, yet they still appears as SDG process. Even within the UN systems, more than 40% of indicators remain without complete data. That means much of the progress we read about mine depends on particle out data or politically filtered information. Now the geopolitical tensions and finally global cooperation itself is under pressure. The rivalry between the major powers, the US, China, and Russia, shapes where and how development money flows. China's Belt Road Initiatives finances roads, ports, and solar parks across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. While this brings growth, it also increases their independence on China technological standards. At the same time, Western donors are redirecting parts of their budget toward security and defense due to the Ukraine war and tensions in the Middle East. As a result, many developing countries receive less aid and favor climate funds just when they need them the most. Finally, the 2030 Agenda began and promised to unite the work around the shared goals. Today, we know that progress is real but uneven, shaped by politics, finance, and power. Money flows where influence already exists, data tells only parts of the story, and cooperation offers highs competition. Yet the vision still matters. Reaching the 2030 will be depend not only on resources but on honesty, accountability, and the courage to question what lies beneath of official narrative.